Thank you so much for coming on Saturday afternoon, taking time and being part of Handi Talks. Very brief about Handi Talks. Few of you might know. Once again, I would like to convey what is the intention behind starting this platform. Being a food entrepreneur myself since 2014, I had many challenges and I always try to go and attend startup talks and various platforms. I used to be one or two guys, an odd man out kind of a guy who always tried to talk about food alone, but there was 95% of technology startups surrounded me. So I thought it's always good to have a platform where we always can discuss, learn and share ideas about what's happening in the food space, and that actually makes the ecosystem much more vibrant. That was the intention behind starting Handi Talks. We started, it's been 1 year and it's continuing. Thank you so much for all the support. Every time we call established brands, entrepreneurs, chefs, farmers, and many other stakeholders in the ecosystem to come and share their stories. And today we have two sessions. One is by Mr. Ananth. He is a social impact leader of Dialogue in the Dark. And second one is about the panel discussion about the power of regional cuisine. Let me start. I'll be moderating both the sessions to just make sure the speakers are comfortable. I would like to invite Mr. Ananth from Dialogue in the Dark. Thank you.
Hi.
Please, Ananth, you can. This will be a very casual discussion. It won't be a very formal, too much intellectual. We'll keep it as much lighter as possible. Whenever we are crossing the boundaries and making it too serious, please warn us. We'll again get back to the mode. Okay. So, hi, Ananth. Good evening.
Good evening, Gopi, and good evening, one and all. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening where we're going to share our journey, and yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Before even we are getting into the story of Dialogue in the Dark, I would like to ask you a few questions about what is your background. I mean, please share a few details about your personal details about where are you from and which schooling and graduation.
Okay. So basically, I come from the family which founded Dialogue in the Dark in India. So my uncle and aunt, Mr. S.V. Krishnan and Mrs. Sudha Krishnan, they are the founders. So they started Dialogue in the Dark in 2011, and I started out as an intern in Dialogue in the Dark when I think I joined back in 2016. That's when I got introduced to this concept when I was probably pursuing my MBA parallelly, and but eventually I fell in love with Dialogue in the Dark, though I started out to prepare for that, and even I kind of cracked it. But yes, here I am again. So what brought me closer to Dialogue in the Dark is what we stood for, and that was not social cause, it was social change. In fact, we don't call ourselves a social venture, we call ourselves a social adventure, because that's how innovative Dialogue in the Dark was, and it completely blew my mind about the kind of impact that we were creating, more than just being an exhibition or a restaurant for that matter. Yeah, and yeah, now I currently head the social impact initiatives, and I take care of relationships across India, and also I also take care of the operations. So slowly I've started taking over the portfolios, and yes, I could say that I've started running it.
Okay, great. Few of us never been to Dialogue in the Dark. So what exactly the experience you will be providing there? Is it? I mean, we all know it is a restaurant. So what kind of an experience you guys would be giving at Dialogue in the Dark?
Okay. Alright, so before I start talking about Dialogue in the Dark, I would like to know how many of you have been to Dialogue in the Dark? Okay, if been to Dialogue in the Dark, okay. How many of you have heard and been? I'm sure, I mean, how many of you have been but you have not been there? I mean, sorry, how many of you have heard but you have not been there? Sorry, my bad. Alright, great. So Dialogue in the Dark is a very, very unique empathy experience that's curated in complete darkness to educate people on the abilities of the disabled and the importance of social inclusion. But we use entertainment as the phenomena which drives the entire experience, because one, we want to make learning fun, and second, we also want this particular idea of social inclusion to be not looked as an alienated concept. We want people to understand that it's a fabric of our society. And we have an exhibition and a restaurant which is located in Orbit Mall, Madhapur. And we recently opened our second outlet in Begumpet. We partnered with Telangana Tourism, and we have one in the Tourism Plaza right now. So coming back to your question of what we do is that we curate real life experiences in the form of our exhibitions, such as for the very first time you would go through different real life experiences, like say taking a walk through a park in the dark and touching and feeling different things around you, hearing different things around you. Basically, you would start connecting with the outside nature through your other four senses, because many a times, or I would say for most of our life, we are completely driven by our sense of vision, and there's also a Harvard study that backs it. So here is an opportunity where you connect through your other four senses, with the outside world, where you, like say, take a walk through a park, you play cricket for the very first time in complete darkness, where you rely on your sense of sound. You get lost in a maze where you are challenged on orientation, because orientation is the first thing that takes a hit when you lose your vision. So how important it is for you to understand and get a sense of balance is what that's all about. And we have several other experiences where you get exposed to the abilities side of darkness, because we always perceive that out of our comfort zone, a place where we are helpless, and that's what we feel also when we enter. But have you ever thought of the empowering side to it, where you can feel in control, where you feel abled? That's what Dialogue in the Dark shows. And eventually when people come out, they realize how we are gifted with so many things that we take for granted, and how the vision, what do you call it, like there's so much that we could do that many a times we fail to acknowledge it, because for us it's just a 30 to 40 minute experience, but for people who have visual impairment, it's their life. So you get to understand what we need to be really, really appreciative about.
Okay, great. So eventually you're saying that it is an experience.
Yeah.
You started in Orbit Mall. That is the first center in India as well as in Hyderabad.
Correct. Right? Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's in 2000.
This was 2011. 2011.
Okay. When we are talking about 2011 and when we are talking about experiences, India is still evolving when we talk about experiences. Still we are in a zone where food comes first. For majority, I'm not saying that the entire country, but majority of even in the metros, people are stepping out and the priority is food.
Right.
So experiences is still, we are educating people that experience stands as a overall thing, and food is integral part of experience. So when you're talking about 2011, it is like 9 years before. So what were your challenges when you entered India and with this concept? And the next thing is, why Hyderabad?
Okay. So Krishnan and I, we are all basically from Chennai, but Krishnan moved to Hyderabad 20 years back, and this is where most of his corporate life happened, and he found this place to be an amazing opportunity to start with. And so back in 2011, or I would say 2010 actually, in fact, Dialogue in the Dark happened by accident for him. He visited Dialogue in the Dark in Atlanta City because this was conceptualized in Germany 30 years ago, and now it's in about 32 countries. And Krishna happened to visit one of the I would say countries that had it back then, and it was in the US. And he visited Dialogue in the Dark because he had some time to kill. His flight got delayed or something like that. And when he experienced it, it was so life changing for him that when he stepped out, he wanted to pursue this, and that's when it happened in Hyderabad. Like it I think the whole conceptualization of getting it to India happened within about 6 months, I would say. So he immediately got it, and he met a lot of investors, and finally it happened in Orbit Mall. And one thing I could say is back in 2011, yes, Dialogue in the Dark was completely new, because we were just getting introduced to the concept of experiential dining in some form of the other, but not in a full-fledged enterprise model like Dialogue in the Dark, which happens on a regular basis. In fact, that was the very reason why we also had the exhibition happening parallelly, because we didn't want to position ourselves as a restaurant, because the ideology takes a hit when you do that. Here we wanted to talk about why we are doing Dialogue in the Dark, rather than telling you why you need to eat in the dark. That's the I would say thought process behind it. ultimately we wanted people to come out with a sense of understanding why we are talking about empathy so much and why it has to be self-driven, and why as a society we are subconsciously operating out of sympathy with the differently abled community. We want them to start thinking on macro level issues, because all said and done, we are talking about a society which houses close to 2.68 crore differently abled, and a platform like Dialogue in the Dark was like the way forward, we thought, in terms of sensitizing or probably revolutionizing the sensitization space. Though sensitization was happening, in some form of the other, but we wanted the result to really lead to an impact which can be quantified. Yeah.
Okay. So we understand the intention or the passion or vision behind this whole thing. My question was how easy or how challenging it was to start in 2011 and educating people. Definitely, I think experiential dining is a new term for many diners even today. So even at the time in Hyderabad, I will be really.
In fact, that was one of the reasons we picked Hyderabad, because Hyderabad embraced this idea like nobody's business. It was, in fact, the moment we came in, more than us attempting to reach out to people, it was the word of mouth which worked really well for us, and we are still thankful to Hyderabad for that. Even now, I would say we are completely driven by word of mouth. People talk about the experience, how it touched them, and how they want others to go through this experience. In fact, a lot of people, there is a conception, that once you go to Dialogue and Art, you have an idea about what it is. The second time you go, probably it's like, hey, I've already done this. But you know what? We have had a lot of repeat visitors, and these visitors, say they visited with their friends, they want to come back with their families, or if they came with their family, they want to come back with their friends. It automatically motivates people to come back with others and show why this could be a life-changing experience. So that way I would say Hyderabad has helped us in kind of stabilizing a base, and in fact now there are people who travel to Hyderabad and have Dialogue and Rag as a part of their itinerary, and this didn't happen in a very structured manner. I would like to admit that. It I think happened over a course of years, which is purely based on people's love for this initiative and the word of mouth that happened.
Okay, great. Whoever attended the previous sessions, in Honey Talks, majorly when we invite entrepreneur, we talk more about business, numbers, investors, challenges. Intentionally, I mean, in this session, we'll be more slightly inclined towards their emotional value rather than a business value, because Dialogue in the Dark is more of a social enterprise, and this session would be majorly focused slightly on the emotional value. With that, you are a BBA grad, right?
Yeah, I'm a BBA grad.
Great. You had a fair chance of becoming a consultant, doing an MBA and becoming a consultant and earning much more salaries. You choose to be coming towards a social impact, and it is at your age and at the time it is not so common at the time. What made you come towards social impact?
I think, see, like I said, basically my background is, like I said, I did BBA, and I completed that in Chennai. I'm basically from Chennai actually. It's been probably a year since I've been in Hyderabad. Yeah. So coming back to this, yes, I think there was a lot of preparation that was going into get into one of the top B schools, and my family was very excited about it. But I think somewhere what happened is I started, like I said, when I started interning with Dialogue in the Dark, and when I started understanding the bigger issue that we were dealing with, and how there was a solution that was so innovative and something that could really make a difference. I think it just what do you call it? I mean, probably I can share an experience which connected me to the experience, I would say. So during the internship, I happened to visit one of the schools in Hyderabad. I don't want to name it. So it was a school where we did a program inside their school. It was called the DESI program. It means Disability Education for Social Inclusion. I mean, we wanted to appeal to kids. So that was the idea. We did small workshops to gamify certain experiences, to make them interact with the differently able, visually impaired in specific, and things like that. So we asked a question to one of the students there. We asked him as to, hey, what is disability? And we got a couple of answers, which all I would say innocent answers. And then we moved to the most important question of, so when was the last time you have met a differently able person? Because that's what it led to ultimately. And the answer which I got is what I think changed my life. One of the kids said, I have seen them. I see them almost regularly in Jubilee's checkpost. And I knew where that came from, but for a moment, we paused. I mean, hey, that's not what I was expecting, but sadly, that's the truth. So we wanted them to elaborate a little more. We're like, hey, can you tell me what you mean? So he talked about how he has always seen them probably selling pens or small accessories or probably begging. So that's when it hit us so hard, or I would say hit me even more hard, that I would say a generation sees a community which is striving for inclusion from a space that it shouldn't be, and nobody knows where it all started. Because there is that's when we witness, or that's when we realize that there's a cycle to it. It's a very very tricky cycle. I think Gopi and I also offline had discussed about it. It's about how many times we don't see the differently abled in a normal circumstance or an environment for us to practice inclusion. But on the other hand, just because we have not practiced inclusion, we don't see them in normal circumstances or environment. You don't know where it all started. It's a very I would say tangled cycle that needs to be consciously removed. But that can happen only when we go into the mindset of people and make them understand how social inclusion should come from an empowering space, which is from empathy and not sympathy. I think that's what drove me closer to Dialogue in the Dark, where we wanted really to make a change in the future generation. Of course, in the current world, especially with the corporate organizations, we are working in order to see how we could make their place more accessible, how to make their place more, I would say, disabled friendly in terms of social structures and applications and everything. But the future generation is the most important, but they're going to be leaders, they're going to be lawmakers, policy makers, they're going to be the change of the future. So I think to answer your question, I think that was the moment that sealed the deal for me, that this is what I want to do. And yes, I did have a lot of I did face a lot of questions as to why do you want to do this, why don't you do this after 40s. I mean, I somewhere feel that you really don't need an age to start contributing back to the society. It's fine even if you're 18, 19. If you think you can really make a difference by doing something small, it's fine. You're good to go.
Great. I'm a bit deviating from my structure of questions, but this question came up because you touched the point of current generation. Yeah. You joined Dialogue in the Dark as an intern. Yeah. You cleaned tables.
Yeah, I did do that.
Yeah, you cleaned tables, you picked up dirty plates, and you worked on the roads to campaign Dialogue in the Dark. And now, after how many years? How many years of your journey?
2016, so we are talking about almost 4 years.
4 years.
Almost. This August it will be 4. Okay. The glorious 4.
These 4 years evolved inside an organization as a leader. Yeah. Why I'm asking, or why I'm bringing this point is, many people in this generation think that you need to, if at all you need to achieve big, you need to be first hired in a position, a designation or a title became more important. And second, we are in a stage of instant. The success has to be instant. The success, they need to see everything very quick and faster. So share how you joined as an intern and what was your journey within 4 years. I know we have to, more than entrepreneurship, this is an intrapreneurship. Yeah. So is it your organization culture, or is it your persistence? Is it
it works both ways, Gopi, for that matter. I think my organization has, as a value, we have always nurtured talent in a way that we don't limit their scope of development as a person in the organization. say if somebody is good at something and somebody is not good at something, we we would love to expose that person to what they are not good at something, to see how they could probably evolve into somebody who can be very holistic, in terms of being I'm talking about being a manager or being a leader or anything for that matter. I think that's what happened to me. And the second thing that contributed to my current state in the organization is the freedom that we were given to experiment. I think that is something really precious for any newcomer into an organization, where you are allowed to use your creative freedom that's given to you. And of course, I did have the advantage of being a family member, where I had access to all the information, all the I mean the history of what worked, what didn't work. And of course, I was encouraged to take a special interest in this, in order to see how this could really be mine, in terms of the ideology, and not just as an employee who's going to take over. No, that's not what it was meant for me to do. And I think even people who work with us, say at an operational level, we try to see how we could expose them to different parts of the management. So we keep working on horizontal promotions and things like that, where we try to move people around, get them to expose, get them to understand where they really see their juices flowing, and see how we could cultivate that. And most importantly, I would say it also involves some kind of passion from the people who work. That's really important, and I'm really thankful that I found my passion in Dialogue in the Dark. Though I was probably meant to start something else. So yes, I think it works both ways, Gopi. It's the openness of the organization, and it's also the zeal of the person to connect with that concept of why you're doing this.
Great. Very glad to know the work culture within DID. Many times, what happens, entrepreneurs will have a thought process that we have to bring a best culture inside organization, and more people need to be given the chances to prove. But as he said, it is both ways. Sometimes we think we are giving too much of chances, but we don't hear from other side. We don't really see that what kind of a struggle from employees who wants to grow. Is the organization giving a right path or a guidance to even grow? So I think being a startup, I definitely need to learn few things in this, because every entrepreneur will have an intention to grow and also make employees grow. But at the same time, it is something, it is mutual.
Because I think at the end of the day, the sense of ownership that you're able to build is what is going to drive. So we are a strong believer of that.
Great. Coming back to Dialogue in the Dark, many of us know you guys as a restaurant, and I mean we know that you are a social enterprise, but you are part of NSDC, and you train people, you place people, and you work with rural villages. So please share a few details about it.
Okay, sure. I probably also want to check if it's okay for me to talk about the twist that happens towards the end of the experience, in order to connect with that.
Yes.
Okay, so since most of you, or okay, not most of you, some of you have been through the experience, you must be knowing that towards the end, when you step out, and sorry for the spoilers, people have not heard, but I really need to talk about it, since this involves that. So when you step out of the experience, and when you meet the person who was guiding you all along, you'll be baffled to know that he was visually impaired himself. In fact, that ironic twist is what connects you to the idea of why we are emphasizing on empathy and not sympathy throughout the concept. Because when you step out, the ultimate question that arises is, hey, if I was able to connect with a person inside without an idea about his identity or disability, then why do we as a society on the outside sometimes operate out of sympathy subconsciously? That's the kind of thought we want people to like carry or think about, and see how they could consciously make an effort to practice that, to see how they could make a difference in their social circle or workplace, anything for that matter. So the reason I'm talking about workplace here is where Gopi has brought a very interesting point, and a very interesting project that we worked for about 3 years. It's called Project Take One. The idea behind Project Take One is, after sensitizing corporate leaders of Hyderabad, what we did is we started engaging with them a little further to understand how they could also open doors to the differently abled in their organization. So we appeal to them with a very simple thought of, hey, if each one takes one, you will be able to eradicate a huge problem of unemployment in the disability space, because we are talking about a community which has about 2.68 crores of population here. But if you actually take the employable factor of it, there are about 1 crore people who are in their employable age, and they have not found an opportunity to work. So they've always been the social welfare scheme recipients, but actually they are economical assets that we don't realize. And in fact that's what Dialogue in the Dark wanted to tap into. So we partnered with NSTC. We became an innovation partner on the practice of sensitization in the corporate sector through Dialogue in the Dark, where we are creating modules in a very entertaining manner or from a managerial space, and we are changing mindsets, and also we are going back to the action point of it, the impact point of it, where we are talking about how they can also be a champion of this particular cause of enabling the differently abled into an urban space. So to give you a background, we have about 70% of our persons with disabilities living in rural sector, and the problem has always been the migration or to find jobs, and that's what we wanted to address to start with. So what we did is we went to the organizations, studied their environment, understood what kind of jobs can be done by a differently abled and what kind of differently abled people can do it, whether it's persons with speech and hearing impairment, or persons with mobility disability or visual impairment, different kinds. And then we also went back to the supply side, that is, I would say we went to the villages. So we went to the grassroots level at a mandal level to understand where we have the disability population concentrated. So we went and did job melas over there to mobilize people, to understand what has been their challenge, why they have not been able to migrate there, because there are a lot of people who are educated. There are people who have the qualification, it's just that they need small upskilling. But what stops them is what we wanted to understand. So we went there, we understood that the stigma that we are talking about is not just at an acceptance level from the organization side or the urban side. It's also at a rural side, where the very own families of the differently abled, they are not willing to send them outside because of the fear of anything could happen, or the or I would say the pure sense of protection as to not let them go, because the government also spends about 10,000 crores every year as pensions to them. So they do get pensions. But there are people who don't want to be in that complacent space. They want to go out, but their parents have always been in between. But not from a negative space, but from a protective space. So we try to address that. We even started counseling parents because of that. So we counsel the potential candidates, the for example the parents, and even we had to talk to several panchayats and people like that, because there were, I would say, barriers at every level that we had to break in order to enable that. So once we were able to do that, we then started doing this on a regular basis, where we started training close to in a span of 3 years we trained about 6,000 differently abled. I'm talking about different disabilities, but major was persons with speech and hearing impairment, because the job opportunities available were more for them actually. Visual impairment, a couple of hundreds, but second, I would say it was persons with mobility disability, especially a lot of MNCs were open to hiring people with mobility disability. And we were able to place about 4,500 of them out of the 6,000 and create a living for them. And this effort doesn't stop there actually, because always it comes down to the retention. And the retention comes only if there is consistent effort in understanding how this is working. So I would say probably we keep in touch with the organizations. We do a regular check as to how the relationship has been, how the productivity has been, how supporting systems have been established or where they need our help. So we used to connect them with a lot of partners. We used to take care of the entire gambit of starting from educating them to actually enabling a inclusive workforce. So that is something that we were doing. But coming back, I think after 3 years, we realized that it became increasingly difficult to mobilize the persons with disability due to migration issues. Because after they come here, it again there are a lot of other issues that come in terms of accessibility is one. I would say in terms of the accommodation, the travel time, and most importantly, sometimes people they become homesick, and especially they have lived in a very different condition. They're marginalized and they have been dependent. So now you have now you have taken them and put them in an independent space. So that needs a lot of self motivation and also external support. And there have been organizations which have provided that, and there are organizations which have provided but still have found it a challenge to retain them. So we have tried to work deep into it, and we found that it's a very difficult space to be in the long run. So we stopped. I wouldn't say we stopped. We took a break from that project, and then we worked on something to bring jobs closer to them. So we started working on the idea of establishing call centers at a mandal level. Instead of taking them and putting them in an urban setup, how about corporates provide or outsource projects at a rural level and generate rural economy? In fact, that will be a game changer. Imagine when we drive through Financial District or Madhapur, it's amazing to see awesome buildings around us, which has a lot of people working, moving in and out, and there is it's a state of the art facility. Imagine seeing that when you drive through Aler, or when you drive through Warangal, or when you drive through Rajahmundry, for that, where you see differently able, completely operating a facility like that, and and also at maximum efficiency. So that's what we are looking at now. How about we take jobs closer and enable the social connection as well, because like I said, the challenge was being away from family. So how about we, what do you call it, I would say, bridge all the gaps. So that's what we're working on right now, and we are taking the support of a lot of corporates on the CSR level, because I think a lot of corporates are willing to try a model like this, because with the government coming up with say laws like the Right to PWD Act, where 4% of your workforce will have to be allocated for persons with disabilities, a lot of organizations are willing to consider and give this an opportunity.
So if the program one is, the take one, what is this new program called?
This is called Telegram.
Telegram.
Yeah, Telegram.
Okay.
So GRAHM. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is what I love. Every entrepreneur has this thing like we won't accept that these things won't work. You guys make things work. So things never work. We should make things work. This is another beautiful pivot. Like if DID could have struck saying that this is not possible, that is where they could have stopped. I like the way you guys are taking initiative into the villages and rural parts where corporates are coming and setting up. This is really
if they can't go, we'll come to you.
Yeah. Finally, the things has to get done. The job has to get done. Thanks.
Because they deserve it.
Right. Many startups these days are getting into social enterprise zone. So what do you say to them when a social enterprise like DID, it has to sustain finally. You guys are you're not NGO, it has to sustain. So what is your suggestion that if a social enterprise has to sustain, what is something they have to take care, especially for the startups who are dreaming of coming into this zone?
The model has to be dynamic, Gopi. It has to be, say when I talk about Dialogue in the Dark, it's not just restricted to retail visitors. We have channels of, we have created channels of business in order to keep it sustainable. And in fact, that's the very reason we even started out in a mall. Because when we talk about an experience like this, it has a niche market, if you are going to position yourself outside. But this idea is something that needs to be, I would say, embraced by everyone. So it has to be in a space where everybody could see and everybody could feel the impact. So that was one reason we were in the mall. And also, like I said, byproduct is the business part of it, where we are a self-sufficient model. So even now, that's something that we are very thankful to the Hyderabad market for that. That even now, Dialogue in the Dark is self-sufficient, and the reason is probably we have also broken it down into unit level in terms of our pricing, because that is one big challenge in the ecosystem. So we have kind of set a model where we really don't have to look at pumping in funds, or we don't have to look at different series, or we don't have to look at diversification, which could ultimately dilute their ideology. So we want to stick to one model which can be effective, and also at the same time this needs to be run with passion, and it needs see Dialogue in the Dark is a franchisable model, but it's not something that you could take up like any other QSR or a retail model for that matter. It involves certain level of management that goes into it, in terms of the operations, in terms of how you do the outreach, or the way you evangelize the brand. So that's the reason we have even now limited to 2 stores, and we are in Hyderabad. We are yet to move out of Hyderabad. Even if we do, we would like to run it as our own store, because for now, because when we enter a new market, it's going to be a different ball game altogether. Every market has a nature, and we would like to understand that, and then see the potential for expanding with the support of sub franchisees or sub licensees for that matter.
Okay. You guys used to have a food truck kind of a concept, the mobile truck, I should say.
No, I wouldn't say mobile truck. Okay, we did. I would say set up Dialogue in the Dark in
Divishri, right? Near Divishri?
Yeah, we did have it in Infosys campus, where we did it as a diversity drive, where we sensitized employees for about a month, and it was moved from one campus to the other, and because corporates were willing to make it a part of their place, and showcase it to their employees, their stakeholders, as to how inclusive they are, and most importantly, how they make an effort to internalize that behavior in the organization. So we have done that. We have been in Infosys. We have done this in ISB. Even in ISB, we have done this.
Okay, so these are drives basically.
Yeah. And outside of Hyderabad, we have set it up in different locations. Okay. We have stayed for about a day or two in different organizations, and we have run the exhibitions. But when we do this, we don't go into the F&B part of it. Okay. We run, I would say, workshops. We run sensitization programs like that.
Okay. Yeah. Coming back to, I agree that not even social enterprise, I think every startup has to do a self-sustainable model. I think here Chaitanya from Almond House is there. Whenever I get a topic about funds, he'll ask, why do you need funds? You sustain your business with business, so you don't look for funds. So glad to hear that again from you. So Dialogue in the Dark is completely self-sustainable. Okay, great. When we said that you are coming from Dialogue in the Dark to have a speaker session with you, one of the reader from social media asked this question, that being a startup or being any organization, hiring became extremely challenging. And you're talking about something, a specialized skill set or special skilled people to be hired. So his question was about how are you making it possible?
Okay. I think manpower is a big challenge right now in the F&B industry in general, and I think it's been there for a very long time. And but with something like Dialogue in the Dark, it involves not only, I would say, a separate set of skills in terms of curating the experiences or managing the visitors. It also involves people to draw a meaning out of it and see how they could go to the next level. So what we do is, during our hiring process, especially with the visually impaired, we in fact I can talk about one of our people and tell you how this has worked out. So we have a guide called Mr. Faisal. So Faisal was in Kerala, and he did his college and schooling and everything over there, and he started working in Bangalore as an accessibility tester, and Then he found passion in dialogue drag when he heard about the concept, because again he had to be away from his family and all of that. But he further took it as a challenge that yes, I want to be away from the family, but I want to be a part of something else, which is not the regular route. So he joined Dialogue in the Dark, and he started out as a waiter, as a waiter. Then he became a tour guide, and then he became a corporate trainer, and then now Faisal has grown into a person who manages the workforce of Dialogue in the Dark across all centers. Whether we have done it as a temporary outlet or whether we have done it as a permanent outlet, Faisal has established himself as somebody who can be completely independent. He travels independently. He does a lot of adventure sports. Faisal loves rock climbing. He's completely visually impaired, but he does rock climbing. So we have had a lot of cases where Gopi, we have found people who come from a very humble background, or I would say, okay, more than humble background, I would say marginalized background, who have found passion in what they do and have been open to learning in spite of not having the skills. They've been open to learning and acquire those skills. That's why I say it requires certain skills, but we don't expect that outside. It's not there, we know that. But are you willing to make an effort? That's what we are trying to look here. And fortunately, we have found people like that time after time, and we have been able to put them in our system, and also been able to pass it on to people who keep coming into the system. And we don't stop people, or I would say we don't restrict people from sticking to Dialogue in the Dark. We have had people who have worked in Dialogue that have moved on to a banking sector. We have had people working in Dialogue in the Dark and move into colleges as professors. So we also had one other person, her name is Swarnalata. She worked in Dialogue in the Dark for about 6-7 years. She became a corporate trainer, just like Faisal. She was a counterpart of Faisal, and now she became an assistant professor in a government college, teaching political science. And now she is a part of the Commissionerate of Collegiate Education. So we want people to understand why they are here. And groom themselves, and we also provide the space for that. We want them to get confident in life. We want them to really understand how this socio-economic independence can really change not just their life but families dependent on them, and also can be a role model for others who come into this community, especially people who work with us, or even when we talk about Project Take One, it helped a lot to showcase such success stories and actually inspire people to come in and see how they could also change their life.
Great, nice to hear. Thank you, Ananth. Thank you very much for taking time and coming to Honey Talks and sharing a lot of details about Dialogue in the Dark. We wish all the best for your future endeavors, and pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for patiently listening to me.
Thank you.